The iron gates of Silvercrest slammed shut behind her, their finality echoing through the frozen mountains like a death sentence. Luna Thea stood in the snow, her bare feet already numb, her torn ceremonial dress, the one she'd worn to the trial just hours ago, offering no protection against the winter wind that tore at her skin. Her hands trembled as she pressed them against her swollen belly where a tiny heartbeat fluttered in rhythm with her own. Our child, she thought, tears freezing on her cheeks. He doesn't even care about our child. Behind those gates was everything she'd ever known. Her home, her pack, her title, and the man she loved with a devotion so complete it had blinded her to the darkness in his heart. Alpha Magnus Vic, her mate, her husband, her destroyer. Please. She'd begged him just an hour ago, kneeling on the marble floor of the throne room while the entire pack council watched. Please, Magnus. I didn't do this. I would never betray you. I would never. Enough. His voice had been ice. Those blue eyes that once looked at her with warmth now held nothing but contempt. The evidence is undeniable, Thea. You conspired with the rogues. You gave them access to our borders. You endangered every wolf in this kingdom. That's a lie. Her voice cracked. Someone planted that evidence. Someone wants you to believe. I said enough. His alpha command had slammed into her like a physical blow, forcing her wolf into submission, stealing her voice. When she looked up at him through her tears, she saw no recognition, no love, just cold, terrible certainty. And standing beside his throne, a small, satisfied smile playing at the corners of her lips, was Leah, Magnus' childhood friend, his Beta's sister. The she-wolf who'd made her hatred of Thea known from the moment Thea had arrived at Silvercrest as Magnus' chosen mate 3 years ago. The she-wolf whose perfume Thea had smelled on Magnus' clothes for the past 2 months. The council has voted, Magnus said, his voice carrying through the vast throne room. You are hereby stripped of your title as Luna of Silvercrest. Your bond to this pack is severed. You will be escorted beyond our borders before nightfall. If you ever return, you will be killed on sight. The gasps from the crowd were nothing compared to the scream that tore from Thea's soul as she felt it. The severing. Like a rope being cut, fraying and snapping, leaving a wound so deep she couldn't breathe. Her connection to the pack, to the land, to everything she'd built here ripped away in an instant. But worse, so much worse, was that Magnus never mentioned their child. Not once. She told him about the pregnancy only yesterday, whispering the news into his ear as they lay in bed, her heart so full of joy she thought she might burst. She'd imagined his reaction 1,000 times. Surprise, then wonder, then that slow, devastating smile that made her fall in love with him all over again. Instead he'd gone still, pulled away, left their bedroom without a word, and this morning she'd been arrested. Now, standing in the snow with night falling fast and the temperature dropping by the minute, Thea understood the truth with brutal clarity. Magnus had known about the baby when he cast her out. He'd known and he'd done it anyway, which meant one of 2 things. Either he didn't believe the child was his or he simply didn't care. Both possibilities felt like knives twisting in her chest. The wind picked up, howling through the trees of the frostwood that stretched endlessly before her. No wolf ventured into the frostwood. The trees were too old, the magic too wild, the predators too vicious. It was a place where rogues went to die and ancient things still walked. It was where Magnus had sent her. Pregnant, alone, in nothing but a torn dress. He hadn't just exiled her. He'd executed her. He just wouldn't have her blood on his hands. Thea took a step forward, then another, her feet leaving bloody prints in the snow. Her wolf, still reeling from the severing, whimpered inside her mind. We're going to die out here, the wolf whispered. Both of us. All 3 of us. No, Thea said aloud, her voice barely audible over the wind. No, we're not. She didn't know where the certainty came from. Maybe it was the mother's instinct already awakening inside her. Maybe it was the last ember of her wolf's pride refusing to be extinguished. Or maybe, just maybe, it was something else entirely. Something watching, something waiting. Because as Thea walked deeper into the frostwood, as the gates of Silvercrest disappeared behind her and the darkness swallowed her whole, she felt it. A presence ancient and powerful wrapping around her like invisible arms. The temperature stopped dropping. The wind stopped cutting. And in the distance, through the skeletal trees, a silver light began to glow. Thea's wolf lifted its head. "What is that?" Thea didn't answer. She couldn't. Because she suddenly knew with the same terrible certainty that had told her she'd survive this night exactly what that light meant. The moon goddess hadn't abandoned her. And Alpha Magnus Vic had just made the worst mistake of his life. Welcome back to the channel. Or if you're new here, welcome to a story that's going to grip your heart and refuse to let go. Tell me, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. I love seeing our pack spread across the globe. And hey, how are you doing today? I genuinely want to know. Now, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because you don't want to miss what happens next in this story. Ready? Let's begin. 3 years earlier, Thea had arrived at Silvercrest on a spring morning when the mountain peaks still wore caps of snow, but the valleys bloomed with wildflowers. She'd been 22, the youngest daughter of the Riverside Pack Alpha, sent to solidify an alliance through marriage to the powerful Alpha Magnus Vic. She'd expected duty, political maneuvering, a cold bed and a colder husband. Instead, Magnus had taken her hand at the bonding ceremony, looked into her eyes with such genuine warmth that her breath caught and whispered, "I know this wasn't your choice. But I promise I'll spend every day making you glad you're here." And for 2 beautiful years he'd kept that promise. Magnus had been everything a mate should be. Strong but gentle, commanding but kind. He taught her to navigate pack politics, to stand beside him as an equal rather than a decoration. When older wolves questioned her youth or her soft heart, he defended her fiercely. When she struggled with the weight of being Luna, he'd held her through the night and reminded her why she was perfect for the role. "You lead with heart," he'd told her once, tucking a strand of her blonde hair behind her ear. "That's not weakness, Thea. That's what makes you extraordinary. You make them better wolves just by being yourself." She'd fallen so deeply in love with him that the mate bond felt like a blessing rather than a chain. But 6 months ago something had shifted. It started small. Magnus coming to bed later, smelling of whiskey and excuses. Cancelled dinners. Shortened conversations. His hand dropping hers when they walked through the pack grounds. The way his eyes would drift when she spoke as if his mind was somewhere, or with someone else. Then Leah had returned from her training at the Northern Summit. Beta, Ethan's younger sister, had always been beautiful, tall and graceful, with flowing dark hair and amber eyes that seemed to glow in firelight. She was a formidable warrior, sharp-tongued and confident in ways that Thea, for all her Luna training, had never quite managed. And she'd been Magnus' first love. Everyone knew it, though no one spoke of it directly. They'd been inseparable as teenagers, destined to be mates, until Lee's wolf hadn't manifested by her 18th birthday, a rare condition that made bonding impossible. Heartbroken, she'd left Silvercrest to train abroad, and Magnus had eventually accepted the political match with Thea. But Lee's wolf had finally emerged during her time away. And the moment she returned, everything Thea had built began to crumble. "She's just adjusting to being back," Magnus had said when Thea mentioned how uncomfortable Lee's constant presence made her. "She's Ethan's sister, Thea. She's family. Family didn't look at your husband the way Leah looked at Magnus. Family didn't find excuses to touch his arm, to lean close when speaking, to laugh at his jokes with a familiarity that made Thea feel like an intruder in her own marriage. And family certainly didn't smile the way Leah had smiled today, standing beside the throne while Thea's entire world shattered. Thea's bare feet left bloody prints in the snow, each step a small crimson testament to her survival. The torn ceremonial dress clung to her body, soaked through from where the guards had dragged her through the gates, fabric ripping on iron and stone. Her wolf was silent inside her mind, not sleeping but broken, shattered by the severing of the pack bond. The emptiness where that connection had lived felt like a gaping wound in her chest, bleeding something vital she couldn't name. She walked mechanically, one foot in front of the other, her hand pressed protectively against her swollen belly. The baby kicked, strong, insistent, alive. Emma. She'd already named her in her heart. "I'm sorry," Thea whispered, her voice cracking. "I couldn't protect you. I couldn't protect us." The memory of 3 years ago felt like a cruel joke now. She'd arrived at Silvercrest on that spring morning, 22 and terrified, expecting a political arrangement devoid of warmth. The Riverside Pack and Silvercrest needed an alliance, and she was the price. But when Magnus had taken her hand at the bonding ceremony, when he'd looked into her eyes with such genuine warmth it stole her breath, when he'd whispered, "I know this wasn't your choice, but I'll spend every day making you glad you're here," she dared to hope. And for 2 years he'd kept that promise. He'd taught her pack politics with patience, defended her fiercely when older wolves questioned her soft heart, held her through nights when the weight of being Luna felt crushing. "You lead with heart," he'd told her. "That's what makes you extraordinary." She'd believed him. She'd loved him with everything she had. But 6 months ago Leah had returned. Magnus' first love, the woman he would have chosen if fate hadn't intervened. Beautiful, deadly Leah with her warrior's confidence and amber eyes that held centuries of knowing. She was everything Thea wasn't. Strong where Thea was gentle, certain where Thea doubted, bold where Thea hesitated. And the moment Leah stepped back into Silvercrest, Magnus began slipping away. Late nights. Whiskey breath. Cancelled dinners. His hand dropping hers in public. Finding them in private strategy meetings that ended when she entered. Lee's perfume on his clothes. Looks between them that made Thea feel like a ghost haunting her own marriage. Then 2 weeks ago, Border Patrol had discovered documents in Thea's handwriting, plans for a rogue attack, maps of patrol routes, communications with enemy packs. All bearing her seal. She'd been arrested at dawn. "Magnus, I didn't write these," she'd pleaded. But the evidence was damning and his eyes had already hardened to ice. The trial had been brutal. Council members she'd considered friends voted for exile without meeting her gaze. Magnus never looked at her once. And standing beside his throne, in the place that should have been Thea's, stood Leah, satisfaction gleaming in those amber eyes. The cruelest cut was the pregnancy. Just yesterday, Thea had whispered the news to Magnus in bed, her heart so full of joy she'd thought she might burst. She'd imagined his reaction 1,000 times. Surprise, then wonder, then that devastating smile. Instead he'd gone still, pulled away, left their bedroom without a word. The next morning she was arrested. Now, stumbling deeper into the frostwood, her body surrendering to the cold, Thea understood the terrible truth. Magnus had known about the baby when he exiled her. He'd known and he'd sent her here anyway. Sent his own child to die. This wasn't political necessity. This was cruelty. Personal, deliberate cruelty. Her knees buckled. She collapsed into the snow, her strength finally giving out. Through the skeletal trees and falling darkness she saw it. A massive black wolf with golden eyes emerging from the blue-tinted shadows, moving toward her with predatory grace. Death then. It had come for her after all. "Please," Thea whispered, her last words a prayer to whatever ancient things still walked these woods. "Not my baby. Take me, but let her live." And as the wolf drew closer, as consciousness began to slip away, something inside Thea broke. And something else, something dormant and powerful, began to awaken. Thea fell forward into the snow, her body finally surrendering to hypothermia, shock and grief. The cold stopped biting. Everything just went numb, distant, as if she were sinking into deep water. Her consciousness flickered like a candle in wind. Inside her womb she felt Emma's heartbeat slowing, the little flutter growing weaker with each passing second. "I'm sorry, baby," Thea thought, tears freezing on her lashes. I tried so hard." Then warmth exploded through the cold. Not gradual, not creeping. Instant, total, like being submerged in summer sunlight. Silver light erupted around her, lifting her from the ground, cradling her in midair as if invisible arms held her. Thea gasped, her lungs filling with air that tasted of starlight and ancient magic. And then she appeared. The moon goddess was impossibly beautiful and terrifyingly ancient all at once. Her form shifted between solid and ethereal, one moment a woman of devastating grace, the next a being of pure light. Her hair flowed like liquid silver, cascading down her shoulders and dissolving into mist. Her eyes contained entire galaxies, stars being born and dying in their depths, nebulas swirling with colors that had no names. Power radiated from her in waves that made reality itself seem to bend and ripple. Thea of Riverside. The goddess's voice didn't just speak, it resonated through Thea's bones, her blood, her very soul. Daughter Luna, mother-to-be, you have been betrayed by one who should have treasured you. Do you wish for death? No. The word tore from Thea's throat, fierce and desperate. No, I want to live. For my baby. She hesitated, then spoke the truth that surprised even her. For myself. The goddess smiled, and it was both gentle and fierce, like moonlight on a blade. Good. Because I have watched you, child. Every kindness you showed to wolves who scorned you. Every peace you brokered when war would have been easier. Every moment you loved with your whole heart, even when that heart was breaking. You are mine, Thea. You always have been. And I do not abandon my own. The goddess pressed a glowing hand against Thea's belly, and warmth flooded through her, chasing away the last traces of cold. Emma's heartbeat strengthened, steady and strong once more. This child is blessed, the goddess declared. Born of betrayal but destined for greatness. She will have power the likes of which wolves haven't seen in centuries. And you will raise her in strength, not sorrow. But first you must survive. And for that you need a guardian. She gestured, and the massive black wolf with golden eyes approached. He was enormous, twice the size of any shifter Thea had ever seen, with fur the color of storm clouds and silver markings that shimmered with their own internal light. This is Theo, the goddess said. The last of the first wolves. The original 12 I created at the dawn of time to walk as guardians between mortal and divine. His brothers and sisters faded long ago, their purposes fulfilled. He remained because I promised him that one day, a Luna would come who was worthy of the old ways. You are that Luna. The wolf transformed, and Thea watched in awe as shadows and moonlight wove together, bone and fur becoming flesh without the violent cracking she'd always associated with shifting. When the light faded, a man stood before her, tall and powerfully built, with storm-gray hair falling to his shoulders and those impossible golden eyes. His face was angular and striking, marked with ancient tribal tattoos that glowed faintly silver. He appeared in his early 30s, but his eyes betrayed millennia of existence. Theo knelt before her, his head bowed. Luna Thea, I am Theo. The moon goddess has bound me to your service until you release me or death claims one of us. I am yours to command. I don't want a servant, Thea whispered, overwhelmed by everything, the power thrumming through her veins, this ancient being kneeling at her feet, the weight of divine favor. I don't want anyone to kneel before me ever again. Theo lifted his head, and approval flickered in those gold eyes. Then we walk as equals. But know this. You were never meant to be a decoration beside a throne. You were meant to be something far greater. Thea felt it then, electricity thrumming beneath her skin like lightning waiting to be unleashed, power coiled in her chest wanting to explode outward. What did you do to me? I returned what was always yours, the goddess said, her form already beginning to fade. Power that was suppressed by your mate bond, by your self-doubt, by your fear of being too much. No more. You will discover what you're capable of in time. A howl split the night, twisted, wrong, nothing natural about it. 6 more answered, echoing through the frostwood. Theo's entire demeanor changed. He rose fluidly to his feet, stepping in front of Thea, a growl rumbling from his chest that made the ground vibrate. Rogues. A hunting pack. Someone is controlling them. But rogues can't hunt in packs, Thea said, her wolf stirring for the first time since the severing. The madness makes them territorial. These can, Theo said grimly, his eyes flashing gold in the darkness. Which means someone sent them. Someone who wants you dead. The moon goddess's form dissolved into silver mist, but her voice echoed through the trees, through Thea's mind, through her very bones. Remember, Thea, you were chosen. You were tested. And you were found worthy. What comes next is your transformation. Embrace it. Then she was gone, and Thea stood in the snow facing 6 approaching rogues with an ancient guardian at her side and power singing in her blood. 6 massive wolves burst through the trees like demons unleashed from hell. Their fur was matted with blood and filth, foam dripping from jaws that snapped with mindless hunger, eyes wild with the madness that marked all rogues. But when those crazed eyes fixed on Thea, something changed. The chaos focused into disturbing intelligence. 6 sets of glowing eyes locked on their target with predatory precision. These weren't random rogues driven by instinct. They were conditioned killers sent with a purpose. Theo moved before Thea could even draw breath to scream. He shifted, but not into the majestic wolf she'd seen before. This form was larger, more terrible. A creature of pure shadow and moonlight that barely resembled anything natural. His eyes burned like molten gold, casting light that made the snow around him steam. His claws seemed to cut through reality itself, leaving trails of silver in the air. He wasn't a wolf anymore. He was something primal, something from an age before the world was tamed, when gods walked as beasts and the line between divine and mortal was written in blood. What followed was brutal and swift. Theo moved like liquid death, each movement precise and surgical. The first rogue lunged at Thea and lost its head before it crossed half the distance, Theo's claws passing through flesh and bone as if they were mist. The second tried to flank him and was torn apart mid-leap, its body hitting the snow in pieces. The remaining 4 attacked in concert, coordinated, trained, but they were facing something from an age when wolves were gods. Theo was everywhere and nowhere, shadow and moonlight dancing between them, leaving only death in his wake. Within minutes, all 6 lay dead in the snow, their blood painting the white ground black in the moonlight. Theo stood among the carnage, his shadow form slowly dissolving back into the man. He was breathing hard but unmarked, not a scratch on him despite the violence. He looked at Thea, his golden eyes softening with concern. "Are you hurt?" Thea shook her head, unable to find words. She stared at the bodies, at the massacre that had taken less time than a heartbeat, and felt something shift inside her. Fear and gratitude tangled together. "Who sent them?" she finally asked, though dread already whispered the answer in her heart. Theo met her eyes and she saw the anger there, ancient and terrible. "Your Alpha." The words hit like a physical blow, stealing the breath from her lungs. Magnus didn't just exile her. He didn't just sever their bond and cast her into the wilderness to die. He sent assassins to finish the job, to make absolutely certain she and Emma never survived, eliminating any witnesses to his crime, any chance of her ever returning to expose the truth. He tried to murder his own child. "Come," Theo said gently, seeing her sway. "We need shelter." He guided her deeper into the frostwood to a cave she would have walked past without seeing. Ancient symbols marked the entrance, glowing faintly silver when Theo's hand passed over them. "This place is old," he explained, his voice reverent. "From when my kind walked freely. We'll be safe here for now." Inside, the cave opened into a space larger than it should have been, warmer than natural stone could explain. Theo wrapped her in furs that appeared from nowhere, "Goddess gifted," he said, and started a fire that burned silver instead of orange, casting light that felt like moonlight made solid. For the first time since her exile, Thea felt warm. Miles away in Silvercrest, Alpha Magnus Vix stood at his bedroom window, staring at the Frostwood's dark silhouette against the night sky. His wolf was going insane, pacing, whining, clawing at his mind with desperate urgency. She's gone, Magnus told himself firmly, trying to believe it. It's done. But the wolf wasn't convinced. Neither, if he was honest, was the man. Magnus. Lee's voice came from behind him, soft and sultry. She'd let herself into his chambers again, wearing a silk robe that left little to imagination. Come back to bed. You're brooding. I'm thinking, he corrected without turning. About her. An edge crept into Lee's voice. She betrayed you. The evidence was clear. Yes, Magnus said slowly, the word tasting wrong on his tongue. The evidence. The documents had been damning. Maps, communications, plans written in Thea's hand. But his wolf snarled suddenly, viciously. Wrong. All wrong. Our mate. The door burst open. Beta Ethan entered without waiting for permission, his expression grave. Magnus, we have a problem. The rogues you sent after Thea, the hunting pack. They're all dead. The room went silent. Dead. Magnus repeated, turning slowly. How? Thea couldn't. It wasn't her, Ethan interrupted carefully. The scouts found them an hour ago. They weren't just killed, they were destroyed. Something tore through them like they were nothing. Something powerful. He paused and Magnus saw fear in his Beta's eyes. There's more. The scouts found silver light residue on the ground. The kind that only appears when the moon goddess intervenes directly. Magnus' blood ran cold. Beside him, Leah laughed nervously. That's impossible. The goddess hasn't manifested in centuries. But Magnus wasn't listening. His wolf was howling now, clawing at him with guilt and wrongness and a terror he'd never felt before. If the moon goddess had intervened, if she'd protected Thea. Find her, Magnus ordered, his voice rough with something that might have been fear. Send trackers. Send warriors. I want Thea found. Now. 3 days later, Thea sat by the silver fire, watching flames dance across stone walls carved with symbols she couldn't read but somehow understood. Her body had recovered. The goddess's power had seen to that, healing frostbite and exhaustion as if they'd never existed. But her mind still reeled, caught between the woman she'd been and the one she was becoming. Her hand rested unconsciously on her belly where Emma kicked more vigorously than before, stronger, more insistent, as if the baby knew they were safe now and was eager to remind her mother they were in this together. Again, Theo said patiently from across the cave, arms crossed over his broad chest. Thea closed her eyes, reaching for that thrumming electricity beneath her skin. It was getting easier each time, like flexing a muscle she never knew she had. Silver light began to emanate from her hands, warm and alive, responding to her will. Good, Theo encouraged, his voice steady and sure. Now shape it. Give it purpose. Thea imagined a shield, protective, impenetrable, strong enough to keep out anything that would harm her or Emma. The light responded immediately, swirling and solidifying into a shimmering barrier between them that hummed with power. Excellent. Theo's approval warmed something in her chest that had nothing to do with the power thrumming through her veins. In a few weeks you'll be able to create weapons, barriers strong enough to withstand even dark magic, maybe even... He stopped abruptly, his entire body going rigid. His head snapped toward the cave entrance, eyes flashing molten gold, and a growl rumbled from his chest that made the ancient symbols on the walls pulse brighter. What is it? Thea asked, the shield dissolving as her concentration shattered. Trackers, Theo said grimly, his voice dropping to something deadly. From Silvercrest. 20, maybe more. These aren't rogues, they're Magnus' elite warriors. They found us. Fear clawed at Thea's throat, cold and familiar. They'll kill me. They're here to murder a pregnant woman, Theo corrected, his voice hard as stone. Orders don't absolve them of that choice. As they prepared to move deeper into the Frostwood, Thea's mind raced, fragments of memory suddenly crystallizing into terrible clarity. Conversations she'd overheard but dismissed. Documents she'd glimpsed on Magnus' desk and forgotten. Pieces of a puzzle she hadn't realized she was solving. The southern border disputes, she whispered, eyes widening as understanding crashed over her. 6 months ago Magnus wanted war with the Red Moon Pack. But I convinced the council to pursue peace negotiations instead. Leah was furious. She said I was making us look weak, that I was thinking like a human instead of a wolf. Go on, Theo urged, watching her with those ancient, knowing eyes. The negotiations succeeded. We established a trade agreement, strengthened our alliance. Thea's breathing quickened, her heart pounding as the truth revealed itself. But Leah had been advocating for conquest. She argued that taking Red Moon's territory would make Silvercrest the dominant kingdom in the entire region. When peace won instead, she lost her opportunity for expansion, Theo finished quietly. And you became an obstacle to her ambitions. But it's not enough reason to destroy me, Thea protested desperately, needing it not to be true. To fake evidence, to manipulate Magnus. Unless Magnus isn't being manipulated, Theo said gently, and the kindness in his voice somehow made the words cut deeper. Unless he's complicit. No. Thea shook her head violently, backing away. He loved me. I know he did. Did he? Theo asked, not unkindly. Or did he love what you represented? A political alliance that strengthened his position. A gentle Luna who wouldn't question his decisions. Someone who could be controlled, shaped, kept in her proper place. The words hit like stones because pieces were falling into place with horrible clarity. Magnus' growing distance hadn't started when Leah returned. It had started when Thea began asserting herself as Luna, when she'd stopped being passive and started making real decisions, when the pack began to respect her not just as Magnus' mate but as their leader in her own right. He hadn't fallen out of love with her. He'd resented her growing strength. Rage ignited in Thea's chest, burning away grief and self-doubt and every last illusion. Silver light erupted from her hands, brighter than ever before, illuminating the entire cave like captured starlight, making the ancient symbols blaze with answering power. That's it, Theo said, something warm and almost proud in his voice. That's the power you've been holding back. Your anger, your sense of injustice. The goddess doesn't just grant power, she amplifies what's already inside you. And what's inside you, Thea, is a Luna's fury. Outside, Commander Drake's voice rang through the trees. Luna, Thea, we know you're in there. Come out peacefully, and Alpha Magnus promises you'll be given a fair trial. Thea laughed. A sound without humor, sharp as broken glass. A fair trial. After he already condemned me. She stood, silver light still crackling around her hands like living lightning. Theo, I don't want to just disable them anymore. His eyebrow raised, curiosity and approval mingling in his expression. No. No. Thea smiled, and it was the smile of a Luna who'd finally shed her last illusion, who'd stopped seeking approval and started trusting her own terrible strength. We're going to send Magnus a message he'll never forget. Commander Drake led 20 warriors through the Frostwood at dawn, their movements coordinated and precise, the deadly efficiency of wolves trained for this exact purpose. Thea watched them from the hidden cave entrance, her heart hammering against her ribs as she recognized faces. Wolves she'd once led as their Luna, wolves she'd cared for, protected, counseled. Now here to kill her. Drake had always been a good man, honorable and steady. She'd trusted him, relied on him. Now he moved through the forest with lethal intent, his hand signals directing his team to surround the cave, to cut off any escape, to ensure their target couldn't slip away again. Thea stepped from the cave wreathed in silver light. Her power radiated outward in waves that made the air shimmer, made reality itself seem to bend. Even the most hardened warriors stumbled back, their wolves whimpering in instinctive submission to something divine. She was transformed, No longer the gentle Luna who led with soft words and compassion, but something fierce, something touched by the moon goddess herself. "Drake," she said, her voice carrying weight that made wolves instinctively lower their heads. "Stand down." "Luna," he caught himself, jaw tightening. "Thea. We have orders. Come peacefully and—" "And what?" Thea interrupted, her voice sharp as broken glass. "I'll get a fair trial?" "Already had my trial, Drake. Magnus condemned me on false evidence and sent me pregnant into the Frostwood to die. Then he sent rogues to finish the job. Now he sends you. When does it end?" Drake's face flickered with something that might have been doubt, might have been guilt. But he raised his hand anyway, signaling the attack. Warriors surged forward. Thea's power responded instinctively, silver light exploding outward like a star going nova. Warriors found themselves frozen mid-attack, held in place by shimmering bonds that wrapped around their limbs like living silver. Others were thrown back by invisible force, their bodies flying through the air to land hard but unharmed in the snow. Drake himself charged her, determined, only to be stopped by a barrier of pure moonlight that burned his hands when he tried to break through, leaving silver marks on his palms. And through it all, Theo stood beside her, not fighting, not protecting, but simply present. A silent testament to the ancient power backing her, his golden eyes watching the warriors with predatory patience. The battle ended in less than 5 minutes. 20 elite warriors lay disabled but alive, groaning in the snow, their pride more wounded than their bodies. Thea stood over them, breathing hard, silver light still crackling around her hands like living lightning. "Tell Magnus," she said, her voice carrying divine authority that made every wolf freeze, "that the moon goddess has judged him, and she finds him wanting. Tell him what happened here. Tell him I'm not the helpless Luna he exiled. Tell him that betraying someone the goddess chose has consequences he can't begin to imagine." The warriors fled, broken and terrified, scrambling over each other in their haste to escape. Only Drake remained, staring at her with something between awe and horror, his burned hands cradled against his chest. "Luna," he whispered. "What happened to you?" "I stopped being the woman my mate wanted me to be," Thea answered, and there was sadness in her voice beneath the steel. "And became the woman the goddess needed me to be." After they left, after the forest fell silent again, Thea sank to the ground. The adrenaline faded, leaving exhaustion in its wake. She should feel victorious, powerful, vindicated. Instead she felt hollow, scraped raw, like winning this battle had cost her something she couldn't name. "You're thinking about him," Theo said quietly, appearing beside her with that supernatural grace. "I'm thinking about the man I thought he was," Thea corrected softly, staring at her hands where silver light still flickered faintly. "Wondering if he ever really existed or if I just imagined him because I needed him to be real." "He did exist," Theo said, and the certainty in his voice made her look up. "People are rarely entirely good or evil, Thea. The Magnus who loved you was real. But so was the Magnus who feared your strength, who needed to be the most powerful person in every room. Both existed in the same man. You didn't imagine the good parts. You just couldn't see the dark ones until they destroyed you." Silence stretched between them, comfortable despite the weight of everything unsaid. Thea had noticed the way Theo looked at her sometimes, not with the possessive hunger Magnus had shown, but with something deeper, something that felt like recognition. Like seeing someone you'd been waiting for across lifetimes. "Theo," she began carefully, not sure why her heart was suddenly pounding. "When this is over, when the goddess releases you from your oath to protect me, what will you do?" His jaw tightened, something flickering in those ancient gold eyes. "I'll do whatever you wish. I am bound to serve until—" "That's not what I asked." She turned to face him fully, searching his face. "What do you want?" Those ancient gold eyes met hers, and for a moment she saw past the guardian to the man beneath. A man who'd lived for millennia alone, who'd watched the world change while he remained constant, who perhaps forgot what it meant to want something for himself, to choose instead of simply serve. I want, he started, his voice rough with something that might have been hope or fear or both. His expression changed violently. His head snapped toward the valley, eyes flashing molten gold, a growl rumbling from his chest that made the ground tremble. We need to move. Now. What? Why? Not warriors this time. Something worse. His eyes blazed with ancient alarm, with a fear she'd never seen in him before. Witches. They materialized from shadows like nightmares given form. 5 figures in crimson robes, the unmistakable uniform of the Blood Coven. Dark magic crackled around their hands, purple and sickly green, the kind of power that made Thea's wolf recoil in instinctual terror, whimpering at something fundamentally wrong with the world. There she is, one hissed, her voice like silk over razors. The goddess's chosen. Our mistress will be pleased. Theo shifted instantly, his massive shadow form erupting into existence with devastating speed, placing himself between Thea and the witches. But before he could attack, they moved in perfect concert. 5 voices chanting as one, a harmony of corruption. Chains of dark magic wrapped around him, not physical restraints but something worse. Binding spells that trapped his ancient power, held his terrible form immobile. He roared, thrashing against the restraints with strength that should have shattered mountains. But 5 witches working together was too much even for the last guardian of the old ways. No. Thea reached desperately for her silver light, but the lead witch laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Oh, little Luna, your goddess's power is strong, yes. But you're untrained, unfocused, barely 3 days into understanding what you are. And we've been hunting blessed wolves for centuries. Dark magic slammed into Thea's chest like a physical blow, stealing the breath from her lungs. She fell to her knees, silver light sputtering and dying as the witch's spell disrupted her connection to the goddess's gift, severing that divine thread like cutting a lifeline. You see, the witch continued, approaching with predatory slowness, savoring her victory, Alpha Magnus isn't the only one who wants you gone. You made quite an impression with that display 3 days ago. Word spread. And our mistress doesn't appreciate the moon goddess interfering in mortal affairs. Who? Thea gasped, fighting to breathe through the crushing weight on her chest. Who sent you? Someone who's been pulling strings in Silvercrest for longer than you've been alive, child. The witch's smile was cruel, delighted. Someone very close to your former mate. Did you really think Leah came up with that plan herself? That she found evidence to condemn you through simple cunning? Horror flooded through Thea like ice water. Leah is working with dark witches. Leah is our mistress's puppet, the witch corrected, relishing each word. As is Alpha Magnus now, though he doesn't know it yet. The sleeping draft she's been adding to his wine make him so very suggestible. So wonderfully easy to manipulate. Everything clicked into terrible place. Magnus' changing personality, his sudden coldness, the way he'd believed evidence that should have seemed suspicious. He hadn't just fallen out of love. He'd been compromised, poisoned, manipulated by dark magic from the inside. Why? Thea whispered. Because war is profitable, little Luna. The witch's eyes glowed with malevolent purple light. And you kept preventing it. You and your inconvenient peace negotiations. Your gentle influence that made wolves soft. She raised her hand, dark magic coalescing into a blade sharp enough to cut reality. But don't worry. Once you and that mongrel child are dead, Magnus will wage the wars our mistress desires. He'll conquer and kill until the entire region is destabilized. And from that chaos we will rise. But first, the witch added, her smile widening, we'll extract your daughter's blessing. There's an ancient ritual, blood magic that can transfer divine power. Imagine it, an alpha wielding the moon goddess's power. Unstoppable. Divine. Your child dies, but her power becomes ours to command. The dark blade descended toward Thea's throat. Thea closed her eyes, one hand pressed protectively over her stomach, whispering a prayer through tears. Please, goddess, save her. Even if I can't be saved, please let my daughter live. And the goddess answered, but through Emma. The blade stopped an inch from Thea's throat, frozen in midair as if time itself had paused. The witch gasped, her eyes widening in shock as silver light erupted, not from Thea but from within her womb, blazing like a star being born. Impossible, the witch breathed. The light grew brighter, warmer, spreading from Thea's belly to envelop her entire body in protective radiance. And Thea heard it, a voice in her mind, small and crystalline like bells carried on wind. Mama, don't be afraid. I'm here. Baby. Thea gasped, tears streaming down her face, wonder and terror mingling. The goddess blessed me, Mama. Made me strong. And I won't let them hurt you. The silver light exploded outward with devastating force. The dark magic chains holding Theo shattered like glass, fragments of corrupt power dissolving into nothing. The witches were thrown backward, their bodies hitting trees and rocks, their own spells disrupted by the sheer purity of the unborn child's power. Thea felt it then, the connection. Not just the physical bond between mother and child but something deeper, more profound. Emma's consciousness, aware and protective even in the womb, channeling the goddess's gift with instinct Thea was still struggling to learn. Together, Mama, Emma urged, her voice filling Thea's mind with warmth and certainty. Your power and mine. Together we're stronger. Thea reached for her silver light, and this time it came easily, amplified by her daughter's blessing. Mother and child, their powers intertwined, creating something the witches had never encountered in all their centuries of hunting blessed wolves. The lead witch scrambled to her feet, fear finally replacing her earlier confidence. Sisters, kill her now. Before. Theo's roar cut her off. Free from his restraints and absolutely enraged, the ancient guardian was a force of nature unleashed. He tore through the witch's defensive spells like paper, his claws leaving trails of silver light. Thea's power disintegrated their dark magic before it could fully form. Emma's light from within disrupted their concentration, creating openings Theo exploited with brutal efficiency. Within minutes, 4 witches lay dead or dying. Only the lead witch remained, bleeding and broken, her crimson robes soaked black. Thea stood over her, silver light crackling around her hands, Emma's protective warmth still pulsing from her womb. Your mistress. Who is she? The witch laughed, wet, painful, blood bubbling at her lips. You'll find out soon enough. She's closer to Magnus than you ever were. She's had her claws in him for months. Her smile was blood-stained triumph. They'll hunt you. And when they extract her power, there will be no stopping what comes next. The witch's eyes went vacant. Dead. Thea stood trembling among the witch corpses, their crimson robes staining the snow black with blood. The enormity of it crushed down on her like a physical weight. It wasn't enough that Magnus had exiled her, wasn't enough that he'd sent assassins. Now there was a dark witch controlling him, manipulating him from the shadows, and they wanted Emma's blessed soul. They wanted to cut her daughter from her womb and steal her divine power. They want my baby, Thea whispered, her voice breaking. They want to kill her and steal her power. Theo was beside her immediately, his hand gentle on her shoulder, grounding her. I won't let that happen. His gold eyes blazed with fierce determination. Do you hear me? I won't let anyone harm either of you. I swear it on my life, on my soul, on everything the goddess made me to be. You can't protect us from everything, Thea said, tears streaming down her face, her hand pressed protectively over her belly where Emma's presence pulsed with warmth. You're powerful, Theo, but you're not invincible. They keep coming. More witches, more warriors, more assassins, eventually. Then we don't run anymore, Theo said firmly, his voice steel-wrapped in certainty. We end this. How? We go back to Silvercrest. His expression was resolute, ancient wisdom gleaming in those golden eyes. We find this witch mistress. We break her hold on Magnus. And we make it clear to everyone, to every wolf, every witch, every creature that might threaten you, that you are under the moon goddess's direct protection. That harming you means invoking her wrath. Magnus will kill me the moment I set foot in his territory, Thea protested, fear and doubt warring in her chest. Not if we break the dark magic controlling him first. Theo's grip on her shoulders tightened, grounding her in his certainty. The witch said it herself. Sleeping drafts, manipulation, magical influence. What if we can reverse it? What if we can show him the truth? And if we can't? Thea asked quietly, voicing the fear that had been growing in her heart. If the Magnus I loved is truly gone? Theo's expression softened and something passed between them. Something electric, profound, that had been building since the moment they'd met in the snow. Then you'll have me, he said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. And I promise you, Thea, I will spend every day of my immortal life ensuring you and your daughter are safe, loved, and honored as you deserve. The words hung in the air, weighted with meaning that went far beyond simple protection. Thea's breath caught as she realized what she was seeing in Theo's ancient eyes. Not just loyalty, not just duty bound by divine command. Something far more dangerous, far more precious. Theo, she whispered. I know, he said, his hand moving to cup her face with infinite gentleness. I know it's too soon. I know you're still healing from Magnus' betrayal. But Thea, I need you to understand. When the goddess bound me to you, I thought it was just another assignment, another purpose to fulfill after centuries of waiting. His thumb brushed away her tears. I was wrong. You're not my assignment. You're my destiny. And He stopped, searching for words that ancient beings who'd lived millennia shouldn't need to struggle to find. I'm falling in love with you, Thea finished for him, surprised by her own certainty, by how right the words felt. You don't have to say it. I can see it. And Theo, I think I might be falling too. He kissed her then, not desperately, not possessively like Magnus used to, claiming and consuming. This was different. Reverent. Tender. A kiss that made her feel cherished rather than owned, celebrated rather than controlled. It was brief, careful, a promise of what could be once the danger passed and they were free to explore what was growing between them. When they pulled apart, Thea felt something shift in her heart, a crack in the wall she'd built around it, and through that crack poured something that felt impossibly like hope. 2 weeks later, Thea stood at the edge of the frostwood, staring at Silvercrest's gates in the distance. She looked nothing like the broken, exiled Luna who'd stumbled into these woods to die. Her blonde hair, once dull with despair, now gleamed with health and power. Her eyes held a permanent silver sheen, the mark of the goddess's blessing. She wore armor that had materialized one morning with no explanation except divine approval. Moonlight forged into metal that weighed nothing but could withstand any blow, shimmering with its own internal light. But the biggest change was internal. She stood taller, stronger, no longer seeking anyone's approval but trusting her own judgment and power. She was no longer the woman who needed validation to know her worth. Behind her stood wolves from 3 neighboring packs who'd heard what happened and pledged themselves to her cause. Word had spread about the exiled Luna blessed by the moon goddess, and wolves tired of Magnus' increasingly erratic leadership had come seeking a better way. They weren't an army built through conquest but through hope, refugees from abusive alphas, warriors who wanted to fight for something worthy, families seeking safety. Last chance to reconsider, Theo said quietly, though his expression made clear he knew she wouldn't. No more running, Thea replied, her voice steady and sure. We end this today. She raised her hand and silver light erupted from her palm, not a weapon but a signal, a declaration that echoed across the mountains like a war cry made of starlight. The Luna had returned. Alpha Magnus Vic paced his throne room like a caged animal, his footsteps echoing off marble that suddenly felt more like a prison than a palace. His wolf howled constantly now, a maddening keen that drove him to the edge of sanity. He'd lost weight, his clothes hanging loose on a frame that had once been proud and powerful. Sleep came only in fragments, punctuated by nightmares of silver eyes and accusations he couldn't escape, couldn't answer, couldn't silence. "Magnus, please, you need to rest," Leah urged from beside the throne, the position that had once belonged to Thea. She'd moved into the palace completely now, playing devoted companion while her control tightened like a noose around his neck. "I can't rest," Magnus snapped, running his hands through disheveled hair. "The neighboring packs are questioning my authority. Half my warriors have deserted. The council whispers behind my back. And the moon goddess herself." He stopped, pressing his hands against his temples where pressure built like a storm. "I keep seeing her. Thea, in my dreams. She's alive, Leah. I know she is." "That's impossible," Leah said smoothly, though alarm flickered across her carefully controlled features. "The frostwood in winter. The frostwood didn't kill her. Something protected her." Magnus turned to face Leah, and for the first time in weeks, clarity sparked in his ice-blue eyes like lightning through fog. "The evidence you brought me, the documents proving her betrayal. I need to see them again." "Why?" Lee's voice sharpened, her mask slipping for just an instant. "Magnus, we've been through this a dozen times. Because my wolf is telling me I made a mistake." The words tore from him with desperate intensity, raw and bleeding. "Because every instinct I have is screaming that I condemned an innocent woman. Because—" The throne room doors exploded inward. Silver light flooded the space, so brilliant and pure that wolves cried out, shielding their eyes against the divine radiance. When it faded, Thea stood in the doorway, Theo at her side like an ancient god of war. Her blessed armor gleamed like captured moonlight, her silver-sheened eyes blazing with power and purpose that made the very air tremble. The silence was absolute, suffocating. Magnus stared at her, his face draining of all color, his wolf suddenly going completely still, then erupting into joyous, desperate howling. "Our mate. He lives. She's here." "Hello, Magnus," Thea said, her voice carrying divine authority that made every wolf in the room instinctively bow their heads in submission. "Everyone except Magnus and Leah. I've come home." "This is impossible," Leah hissed, stepping forward, her composure cracking like ice under pressure. "You were supposed to." She caught herself, but far too late. "Supposed to what?" Thea asked, moving forward with predatory grace, wolves parting before her like water before a ship's prow. "Die." Lee's face went bone-white. "Yes," Thea continued, her voice soft but cutting like a blade wrapped in silk. "I imagine that was the plan. The rogues didn't work. The warriors failed. Even the dark witches your mistress sent couldn't finish the job." She smiled, cold, sharp, devastating. "The moon goddess had other ideas." "Dark witches?" Magnus' voice was hoarse, confused, his mind struggling to process what he was hearing. "What are you talking about?" "Oh, she didn't tell you?" Thea's gaze fixed on Leah with laser focus, pinning her like a butterfly to a board. "About the blood coven she's been working with? About the sleeping drafts she's been putting in your wine every night to make you suggestible? About the dark magic she's been using to manipulate your thoughts and emotions?" "That's insane," Leah protested, but her voice wavered, cracked. "Magnus, she's lying. She's a traitor trying to—" "Evidence," Thea interrupted, raising her hand. Silver light poured forth like liquid starlight, coalescing into projected images that hung in the air like ghostly holograms, the moon goddess granting her the ability to reveal truth. The throne room gasped collectively as they witnessed. Leah in a secret chamber, meeting with 5 witches in crimson robes, their faces twisted with malice. Leah forging documents with Thea's seal, dark magic crackling purple around her hands as false words appeared in Thea's handwriting. Leah slipping purple liquid into Magnus' wine goblet night after night, her smile cruel and satisfied. Leah leaning over Magnus while he slept, whispering poison in his ear, dark magic swirling around her words like smoke. Thea is weak. Thea's a threat. Thea betrayed you. The conspiracy planning, the frame job, the exile, the assassination attempts, all laid bare. The moon goddess sees all, Thea said softly into the stunned, horrified silence. And she's been watching. No, Magnus whispered, staring at the images with dawning horror, his entire world crumbling around him like sand castles before the tide. No, this can't be. Leah, tell me this isn't true. Tell me I didn't. He couldn't finish. As he had. He'd exiled his pregnant mate. He'd sent her to die in the frozen wilderness. He'd condemned his unborn child to death. And if these images were true, and the moon goddess didn't lie, he'd done it all while being magically manipulated, poisoned, controlled like a puppet on strings. The wolf inside him howled with anguish, finally understanding what he'd done. What they'd destroyed together. Lee's face twisted with rage and desperation as her careful plans unraveled before the entire court. You were supposed to choose me, she shrieked at Magnus, all pretense of composure shattered like glass. We were meant to be together. Before she came along with her gentleness and her peace treaties, making you soft, making you weak. Dark magic crackled around her hands. Power no wolf should possess. Proof of her corruption, her betrayal of everything their kind stood for. I did what was necessary. With her gone, we could have been great together. We could have conquered every pack in the region. Built an empire. Her eyes blazed with malevolent energy, purple light swirling in their depths. But she survived. The goddess interfered. So I'll finish this myself. Leah launched herself at Thea. Dark magic forming into deadly spikes aimed directly at her throat. Thea didn't move. He didn't need to. Theo was there, a blur of impossible motion intercepting Leah midair with devastating precision. They crashed to the marble floor, Theo's hand wrapped around Lee's throat, his eyes blazing with ancient fury that made reality itself seem to tremble and crack at the edges. You threatened my Luna, he growled, his voice resonating with centuries of accumulated power. You tried to murder a goddess-blessed child. You used dark magic to manipulate an alpha and corrupt an entire kingdom. His grip tightened. Leah choked, dark magic sputtering and dying against the purity of Theo's ancient power like candles in a hurricane. Theo, wait, Thea said quietly. Immediately, without question, Theo released Leah. She collapsed to the marble floor, gasping, defeated, her corruption laid bare for all to see. He stepped back but remained coiled to strike if she moved, a predator allowing his prey one final moment. Thea approached slowly, standing over the woman who'd destroyed her life, who'd tried to murder her and her daughter, who'd corrupted Magnus and poisoned an entire kingdom with dark magic and darker ambitions. I could kill you, Thea said quietly, her voice carrying absolute authority. The goddess would permit it. After everything you've done, no one would question it. She let that truth sink in, watched Lee's eyes widen with fear. But I'm not the monster you tried to make me out to be. She looked at Magnus, whose face was a mask of devastation and dawning comprehension. The sleeping drafts, the manipulation, they cloud judgment, Magnus. They amplify fears and insecurities. But they don't create feelings from nothing. Her voice was sad but firm, carrying painful truth. Somewhere inside you, you wanted to believe I'd betrayed you. Because believing that was easier than confronting the real problem. What problem? Magnus asked hoarsely, his voice breaking on the words. That you couldn't handle having a Luna who was your equal instead of your accessory. Thea's words were gentle but cut deeper than any blade. I loved you with everything I had. For 3 years I devoted myself to you, to this pack, to us. But Magnus, you needed me weak. Dependent. Dave. When I started making real decisions, when I brokered peace instead of war, when the pack began respecting me as a leader in my own right and not just as your mate, you resented it. Magnus opened his mouth to protest, But she continued relentlessly. The magic didn't create that resentment. It just gave you permission to act on it. It amplified what was already there. Your fear of not being the strongest person in the room, your need for control, your insecurity about sharing power. She placed her hand on her belly, now visibly swollen with Emma. I learned the hard way that love isn't enough when respect is missing. That devotion means nothing without partnership. That I can't build my worth on someone else's validation. Turning to address the entire court, Thea's voice rang with divine authority. I didn't come back for revenge. I didn't come to reclaim my title or sit beside a throne. I came to break the dark magic poisoning this kingdom and to offer you all a choice. She gestured to the wolves gathered behind her. Refugees, warriors, families, all looking at her with hope blazing in their eyes. I'm founding a new pack. Moonhaven. A sanctuary for wolves who've been cast aside, betrayed, broken by cruel alphas who abuse their power. A place where strength is measured not just in dominance but in compassion. Where leaders earn respect through character, not fear. Her silver eyes swept the room. Any wolf who wants real leadership, strength and mercy, power and justice, you're welcome to come with me. I won't force anyone. I won't demand submission. But I'm offering you something your alpha never did. A choice. And if anyone tries to harm Moonhaven, harm its Luna, or harm any wolf under her protection, Theo added, his voice carrying lethal promise that made everyone shiver, they'll answer to both the moon goddess and the last of the first wolves. I promise you, the reckoning will be biblical. Silence stretched like a held breath. Then one by one wolves began stepping forward. First a few warriors. Then families with children. Then omegas who'd been treated as servants. Elder wolves who remembered what leadership with honor looked like. Young wolves seeking a better future than endless conquest. One by one they crossed the throne room, bowing to Thea as they passed, pledging themselves to her cause. Magnus watched his kingdom crumble, his face ashen. More than half his court, maybe 2/3, chose Thea over him. Thea, please. His voice was raw with desperation. I know I can't undo what I did. I know there's no apology big enough, no words that can. He stopped, looking at the woman he'd exiled, transformed into something far beyond him. But let me try. Let me spend the rest of my life trying to make this right. How? Thea asked simply. You cast me out pregnant. You sent rogues to kill me. You sent warriors to murder me. You tried to have your own child assassinated. Her voice didn't waver. There's no coming back from that, Magnus. No redemption arc, no forgiveness that undoes it. Then what do I do? He asked, voice cracking with genuine anguish. How do I live with what I've done? Thea looked at him, really looked, and saw not the man she'd loved but someone smaller, broken by his own choices and weaknesses. You become better, she said finally. You clean the dark magic from what's left of your kingdom. You lead with actual integrity. You build laws that prevent alphas from having unchecked power. She paused. And you live every single day knowing that you had something precious. A mate who loved you, a child who would have adored you, and you threw it all away because you were too weak to share power. She turned toward the door, Theo immediately at her side. The child, Magnus called after her, desperation in every word. Our daughter. Will I ever know her? Thea paused at the threshold. That's up to her, she said without turning. When she's old enough to understand, if she wants to know her biological father, I won't stop her. But Magnus, now she looked back. She'll know the truth. And she'll have to decide if you're worth forgiving. That's not my choice to make for her. Take care of them, Magnus said, his voice breaking. Not to Thea but to Theo. Please. Take care of my girls. Every day of my immortal life, Theo replied. Not because you asked but because they deserve nothing less. Then they were gone, Thea walking out with her head high, surrounded by wolves who'd chosen her. Behind them, Alpha Magnus Vic sank to his throne and finally understood what he'd lost. Everything. 6 months later, Thea stood on the balcony of her new home, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of rose and gold. Moonhaven spread below her, not a kingdom in the traditional sense, no grand palace or iron gates. Instead, cozy homes dotted the landscape, connected by stone paths winding through gardens bursting with life. A place of healing, second chances, peace. Her hand rested on her swollen belly, now full and round. Any day now Emma would arrive. She could feel her daughter's excitement, that same crystalline consciousness eager to finally meet the world face to face. Soon, little one, Thea thought, and felt Emma's warm response like sunlight in her mind. You should be resting, Theo's voice came from behind her, affectionate exasperation coloring his tone. The healer said. The healer says a lot of things, Thea interrupted with a smile, turning to face him. I'm pregnant, not fragile. Theo crossed the distance, pulling her gently into his arms. Over the past months, what had begun as protection had deepened into something neither could deny. Real love, built on respect and partnership rather than bonds forced by fate or politics. I know you're not fragile, he murmured against her hair. You're the strongest person I've known across centuries. But you're also carrying precious cargo, and I'm allowed to worry. Thea leaned into his warmth, marveling at how safe she felt, how cherished. This was what love should be, not the desperate, anxious devotion she'd given Magnus, but something steady that made her more herself rather than less. Have you heard from the Northern Scouts? She asked. 3 more families arrived last night. Refugees from Alpha Roman's territory. Apparently he's been challenging anyone who questions his authority to blood duels. Theo's expression darkened. They'll fit in well here. Ella is already setting them up with housing. Ella, one of the first wolves to join Moonhaven, a former Omega abused by her pack's hierarchy who'd blossomed into one of their most capable organizers. That was what Thea had built here. A place where wolves could become who they were truly meant to be. And Silvercrest? Thea asked quietly. Theo hesitated. Magnus has cleaned house. Exiled the council members working with Leah. Established new laws limiting alpha power. No more exiles without trial by neutral parties. He paused. He's trying, Thea. Trying to be better. Good, Thea said and meant it. She no longer wished Magnus harm. That wound had healed, leaving only scar and hard-won wisdom. He's asked again, Theo added carefully. If he can visit. After the baby comes. Thea considered. Magnus had been sending letters for months. Not demanding, just apologizing, begging for a chance to know his daughter even if he'd lost Thea forever. Tell him yes, she decided. One supervised visit after Emma is born. I'll be there the entire time, Theo assured her immediately. I know. Thea smiled, touching his face. My fierce protector. Always, Theo promised, then kissed her with tenderness that still made her heart skip. A sharp pain suddenly lanced through Thea's abdomen. She gasped, gripping Theo's arm. Thea? What's wrong? I think, another contraction stronger. Thea laughed breathlessly. I think our daughter has decided she's done waiting. Theo's eyes went wide with panic. This ancient, powerful guardian who'd faced down witches and armies without flinching was terrified of childbirth. Right. The healer. I'll get the healer. Don't move. Theo, Thea called, love flooding through her. I need you here with me. He stopped, turned back, and in 3 strides was at her side. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Whatever you need. Just your hand, Thea said. That's all I need. 12 hours later, as dawn broke over Moonhaven, Thea cradled her daughter against her chest, tears streaming down her face as she stared at the tiny, perfect miracle in her arms. Emma had her mother's blonde hair and her father's blue eyes, but there was something else. A silver shimmer to her gaze that marked her as moon-blessed, eyes that held awareness far beyond a newborn's. She's beautiful, Theo whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Absolutely perfect. Do you want to hold her? Thea asked. Theo looked terrified again. I don't. What if I hurt her? You won't, Thea said firmly, carefully transferring Emma into his arms. You could never hurt her. Theo held the infant like she was made of glass, his ancient gold eyes soft with tenderness. Emma stared up at him, then wrapped her tiny hand around his finger with surprising strength. Hello, little one, Theo murmured. I will protect you with every breath in my body. I will help your mother raise you to be strong and kind. And I will love you as if you were my own. Emma made a contented sound, and Thea felt her daughter's consciousness reach out with emotion. Acceptance. Trust. Love. She's already chosen you, Thea said softly. As her protector. Her father, if you'll accept that role. Theo's head snapped up, eyes glistening. You mean? Magnus is her biological father, Thea said gently. But you're the one who will be here every day. The one who will love her unconditionally because you choose to. That makes you her father in every way that matters. Theo's voice broke. I would be honored. Emma, Thea said, naming her daughter. It means universal, whole, complete. Because she completed me in ways I didn't know I needed. Emma, Theo repeated. It's perfect. 3 weeks later, the meeting took place in Moonhaven's garden. When Magnus arrived, he looked nothing like the confident alpha who'd cast Thea out. He was thinner, with shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and heavy guilt. May I see her? He asked quietly. When he saw Emma's face, he made a sound between a laugh and a sob. She's beautiful. She has my eyes. And your hair. And the moon goddess's blessing, Thea added. Emma. Her name is Emma. I'm sorry, Magnus said, tears running freely. I'm so desperately sorry for what I did. I know, Thea said simply. They discussed terms. Monthly letters, supervised visits twice a year. Magnus accepted everything with gratitude Thea knew he didn't deserve but Emma might one day appreciate. As Magnus left, Thea felt the last chains of her past fall away. She looked down at Emma, then up at Theo. You're free, Thea, Theo said softly. We're free, Thea corrected. All 3 of us. Around them, Moonhaven hummed with life. Wolves laughing, children playing, families gathering. The sanctuary pack she'd built from betrayal, thriving and growing stronger every day. As the sun set, painting the sky in amber and rose, Thea understood what the moon goddess had known all along. Sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what you're truly meant to be. She'd been a gentle Luna seeking approval. Then a betrayed mate facing death. Then a goddess-blessed warrior. Then a powerful leader. Now finally she was simply Thea. Mother, leader, survivor, beloved. Exactly who she was always meant to become. And Magnus? He was left to live with understanding exactly what he'd destroyed, watching from a distance as his daughter thrived with a better father. That, Thea thought as Theo kissed her forehead and Emma cooed contentedly, was the best revenge of all. Not his destruction but her happiness. The moon goddess watches over us all. And sometimes, losing everything is exactly what we need to gain ourselves. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Thea's journey from betrayal to triumph. Tell us your name, where you're watching from, and rate this story from 0 to 10 if it touched your heart. Which moment hit you hardest? When Magnus exiled his pregnant mate? When Emma saved her mother from the womb? Or when Thea chose mercy over revenge? Drop your thoughts below. If you're Team Theo, the ancient guardian who became the father Magnus should have been, let me know with a fire emoji. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss our next powerful werewolf story where betrayed Lunas rise from the ashes and the moon goddess delivers justice. Remember, sometimes we're broken not to destroy us but to remake us into something stronger. Until next time, may you find the courage to walk away from anyone who makes you feel small. Stay blessed, beautiful souls.